Well, hello, that's me again. Today is May 23. It is Thursday, and we're one day away from Friday. And here's a little bit of sit rep for you guys. But I want to start with a really interesting development. It's kind of almost, surreal. The Georgian Prime Minister, Irakli Kobakidze, look what he stated, and this is today's reporting. As Kakhabidze pointed out, even against the backdrop of prolonged blackmail from the West, there was a staggering threat voiced by one of the European commissioners by phone. In a conversation with me, the European commissioner listed a number of measures that Western partners could take in the event of overcoming the veto on the law on transparency. And listing these measures noted, you saw what happened to Fico, and you should be very careful. The press service of the Georgian government quoted him as saying, thus reported. This is very important to understand why, for example, Russia is not going to be talking to those people. People in Brussels are no better than, for example, a bunch of the war criminals in the United States. And they are open terrorists, and they blackmail people, the same as Mr. Bolton at some point of time went out and started threatening the the criminal court. He was threatening judges with the saying that we know where your children are. So this is the level of the Western diplomacy, quote unquote, and the only thing they can do. They have no guts, they have no courage to fight a real war. What they do, they blackmail people and they kill them or try to kill them. Now we understand that Mr. Fico's situation wasn't some kind of loner. His wife, a Ukrainian, she was directly connected to the Ukrainian intelligence services. So, and this we know who runs those intelligence services, so to speak. It is primarily MI6 and CIA. So Mr. Fico wasn't just accidental, some stupid 71-year-old, intelligentsia, so to speak. It was a very well designed operation to just kill the guy who, not being pro-Russian really, being pro-Slovak, and that's already is a huge deadly sin in the book of the globalists and their cabal. So then you have this. And Mr. I think we can call him directly the basically supporter of the terrorism and war criminal who in any normal country would be behind bars and if not executed. But yeah, we have to congratulate people of South Carolina for electing this low life. But look at this. He reacting to the International Criminal Court, not even issuing, but getting ready to issue the arrest warrant to Mr. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Look what he stated. And he is actually correct in this case. We, hopefully together, will find a way to register our displeasure with the International Criminal Court, because if they do this to Israel, we are next. Graham said on Tuesday at the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee hearing where U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was testifying. Yeah, you can clap all you want, Graham replied as a group of protesters in the chamber began to applaud at his "we're next" comment. And actually he is absolutely correct. His hands are, he's soaking in blood of innocent civilians, and this is the guy who can hide only within the United States, which increasingly becomes dysfunctional. And let me show you something from their battlefield today. In the Kharkiv area, they continue to try to hit Belgorod, for example, some shrapnel and parts which have been shot down by Russian air defense over Belgorod this night. They fell on the children's, summer camp. Well, there you go. That's pretty much what United States love to have as the stooges, the terrorist state headed by now absolute dictator with no legitimacy. But look at this. So I want to again state and emphasize what is going on there. This is from yesterday, actually. And as you can see yourself, Russians are getting to the Liptsi. The battle for Liptsi already actually started, from what I hear. And believe me, I'm not there, so I just use sources I trust and I know they are very reliable. But as you can see yourself, from Liptsi, which becomes a strategic point, you have only a distance of 26.3 kilometers. Complete fire control. Actually take this Liptsi as the center and the radius and draw the circle or circumference, so to speak. And you will see yourself that suddenly you control pretty much all key locations from which they want to try, and they do constantly attack Belgorod. Primarily, not primarily, the only thing which they do, they are attacking the civilian infrastructure and killing civilians. And if that hasn't been enough, now we have this situation also in this area. And as you can see yourself, we're not far from Kupiansk here too, 21.3 kilometers, and this is the fire control. So suddenly this fire cauldron, so to speak, begins to shrink for Ukrainian forces, and they are in a full panic mode. And if you think so that they are not in the full panic mode, let me explain to you why they are. And here we have this guy. So this guy, as we know, he is people say that he is a psychopath. He is not psychopath. He is sociopath. He is a schlimazel. He is a lowly political science turned lawyer, Anthony Blinken, who is also himself is a war criminal. And look at this. So suddenly inside the White House, a debate over letting Ukraine shoot US weapons into Russia. After a sobering trip to Kiev, I don't know how sobering it was, he was rocking in the free world there, but Secretary of State Anthony Blinken is urging the president to lift restrictions on how Ukraine can use American arms. So, okay, so what Blinken says? Well, guess what? First, they begin to write this. Since the first American shipment of sophisticated weapons to Ukraine, President Biden has never wavered on one prohibition. Here, President Vladimir Zelensky had to agree to never fire them into the Russian territory, insisting that this would violate Mr. Biden's mandate to avoid World War III. First, American weapons are not measured in dollars or in sophistication. They are not really that sophisticated, and they are defeated primarily. Moreover, what is constantly being omitted, they've been using those weapons, those ATACMS that shooting at Russian territory constantly. And Russian air defense absolutely constantly shoots down ATACMS, for example, over Belgorod. So the whole debate, the whole thing about it is about showing that they are doing something. Hopefully, you know, American and Western public is brainwashed and has the attention span of the guppy fish, but truth is, as I speak non-stop, they've been doing this already. The same as they talk about sending troops or whatever, advisors to, which we discuss shortly, in Russia. To Russia, actually, to the Ukraine, what's left of it. So they talk, New York Times, that by the consensus around that policy is fraying. Propelled by the State Department, there is now a vigorous debate inside the administration over relaxing the ban to allow Ukrainians to hit missile and artillery launch sites just over the border in Russia. They do it try to do it all the time. So, no news. The proposal is pressed by the Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken. Again, J. Blinken has about same amount of understanding of military and military technology as I have understanding of Chinese choreography. And believe me, I have none. So, and when you listen to this and see that, you already know they're not just panicking. They are desperate, and they constantly use as one-trick pony. They pull out same old things, same old news, and they regurgitate. They recycle them non-stop because they have nothing left. And if you look attentively at the losses for today, you can see yourself that pardon me for using this term, it's horrible, I know, but cannon fodder recycling levels are one of the highest they ever were. Actually, some of them are higher than during the so-called counteroffensive, which failed miserably. And as you can see yourself, just yesterday, 1,330 have been killed and wounded. And again, this is Russian Defense Ministry. They count only what they can see. What they cannot see, I don't even know, So you can easily multiply this number by 2. Not to mention the fact that actually the Ukrainian troops are being executed by their own, especially if they don't want to go into those, what it's called, mid storms or storming. And if you look attentively at just yesterday, 7 tanks and APCs, 43 armored vehicles, 23 artillery and mortars. So it's just, astonishing, guys. We are looking at the slaughter on the industrial scale. And so suddenly, when you look at those things, and then you have this situation with Zelensky formula, respectable Gazeta.ru reports, and look at this. This is shocking. They want to do this again. It's all PR. They have no means, economic, military, intellectual, to do anything about it. But look at this. In preparation to this funny meeting on peace, even that thing, which will not be attended by Russia, obviously, and China, for example, what's the point to attend it? Look at this. President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, will cut the peace formula, quote unquote, for the peace conference in Switzerland. The Ukrainian edition of Delovaya Stolitsa, which is the business capital, writes about this. The formula will be reduced from 10 to 3 points. That is more than 3 times. The most consistent points of the formula will be brought to the negotiating table are radiation and nuclear safety, sure, food security, and the release of prisoners and deportees. The remaining 7 points, including the clause on the withdrawal of Russian troops from the territory of Ukraine, have been postponed for later, and for a distant later, Ukrainian journalists noted. You can see yourself this is a moral breaking point already happening. We know what is happening with the armed forces of Ukraine, and as I already stated, I'm not going to be telling you the numbers because I don't know. I can only speculate, but kill ratio there is astounding. It's just absolutely terrifying. And what is happening, as I already stated, people who initiated all this, they have to be held responsible. And it doesn't matter who they are. Are they Ukrainians? If they are Europeans or Americans, those people committed the crimes against humanity, and they are war criminals. Like Victoria Nuland, for example. This lady should be behind bars because of what she did. But you know what? When you look at people like, for example, late Madeleine Albright, and she had the devil written all over her face. Guess what? She went to teach in the international relations in Georgetown, I believe. So can you imagine what kind of the product is going out of there? Yeah, we know who they are, genocidal maniacs primarily. But we have to kind of look further. We suddenly have the letter from the legislators. The lawyer turned strategist, Mr. Turner, and the group of his, nincompoops from Congress, they sent 3 days ago a letter to Mr. Lloyd Austin. And they ask for authorizing the use of U.S.-provided weapons to strike strategic targets within Russian territory under certain circumstances. Whatever those circumstances are, our Ukrainian allies are requesting permission to use certain weapons provided by the United States to conduct operations on strategic targets inside the Russian and Russian-controlled territory, according to a May 14 report by Political. The Biden administration's current policy is handcuffing Ukraine's ability to push back on Russian forces near Kharkiv with U.S. origin weapons. What a load of BS, because ATACMS are being thrown into Russia constantly. It's just that it's not that good, against the really developed opponents such as Russia, and especially about the not arguably absolutely the best air defense in the world. So, but yeah, the only reason they do is what the only thing that Washington can do. It's PR. They have no military, economic, political competences and wherewithal to do anything about it. So these guys, here are the names of these guys. Do it obviously for the PR and promotion of their, so to speak, tough stance. So here they are: Michael Turner, Chairman, House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence; Jim Himes, Gerald Connolly, Darren LaHood, Linda Sanchez, and all on and on and on. So these are the type of people who sit in the Congress, and they just want to to unleash the war, because obviously all of them are totally ignorant people. They don't understand what real war is, what it means for them. As by the way, for the very many, not all, make no mistake, not all, but for many US military, those people are just, not very bright and not very good. And you know what? Listen to a person who knows his stuff, and this is Mr. Colonel Larry Wilkerson. And yesterday, talking to Nima, our good friend Nima, wonderful, who is becoming a wonderful journalist, he talks, directly. NATO will lose if it fights Russia, as Putin prepares for a bigger war. And Colonel Wilkerson absolutely dismantles their military and political decisions, which were happening with the United States since the 2003 and, whatever the name of the operation, I don't remember, Iraqi freedom? Yeah, right. We know what freedom is. So if you think that this coping, this understanding of the reality, how to put it politely, is not there, yes, it is there now. They begin to cope hard. And it's really hard. And this is what desperation looks like. And I will give you just two examples. One example I actually elaborated upon in my on my blog. You can go to my blog at smoothiex12.blogspot.com, or just dial or type reminiscence of the future in Google, and it will get you actually to my blog. And I spoke about it. Let me remind you about what I was talking about. It's the article in the Hill, and this is written, make no mistake, by one of the guys who was in the military intelligence for 30 years. So Jonathan Sweet, he was a colonel. And it was published yesterday, and guess what? And they talk about Biden as losing World War III. Okay, yeah, well, it is World War III, just different manifestation of this war. And you can read this article, and my gosh, I suggest you to go to my blog again and read how I elaborate on this article, because the level of incompetence and coping at butthurt is unbelievable. Not to mention, academically, you have middle schoolers who can come up with better explanations and better elaborations of the issue. And this is just one of the articles, but get a lot of this. You can go to any kind of the US American military sites, which masturbate to all those military toys like Defense One or whatever, We're the Mighty or War on the Rocks, or whatever, drive a bunch of amateurs who have only understanding of which amounts to actually high-intensity police operations of the United States in the last 20 years, primarily in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere, and they begin to, wax, strategic there, and which they have no background whatsoever. And of course, they discuss military toys. Nothing wrong with discussing military toys. Military technology obviously is a crucial element of the strategic and operational and tactical considerations, and I'll be talking about what tactics really is, but not today, though. And when you go and read this, it's just like, wow. So we have this guy, Andrew Radin. He's from RAND. It was published yesterday in Defense One, and you already see yourself kind of the picture, the broader picture of the coping and desperation is there. And so he has to, and he basically repeats the same garbage which all those congressmen and Tony Blinken, they repeat that, you know what, that you know how to win in Ukraine, pour it on and don't worry about escalation. So here's the dude who basically argues for more cowbell, as my good friend Larry Johnson says, using, of course, referencing the famous SNL sketch. But he repeats the same garbage. That United Biden administration has failed to provide the necessary US military involvement for fears of Russia using nuclear weapons against Ukraine or taking actions against US forces. Well, yeah, it's actually a very legitimate fear because, yeah, you want to fight Russia, you get your ass kicked. That's simple as that. You cannot defeat Russia on the battlefield. It's axiom. It's not even theorem. What you can do, obviously, if you go and listen and read Clausewitz, which he stated after the Napoleon's disaster in Russia, and what other writings which accompanied his warm Krieg on war, he was writing about that you cannot defeat or occupy Russia simply because there's no enough resources in Europe, and the only internal basically mayhem can put such country as Russia down, which is absolutely true. He was correct already then, 200 years ago. So, and he talks about this, Mr. Radin, that the administration caution was visible from the beginning of the war. The administration policy of no U.S. boots on the ground limits U.S. military presence to a few personnel attached to the embassy. The scope of U.S. weaponry provided to Ukraine has expanded, but only gradually. So let me put it this way. United States has nothing in its arsenal short of nuclear weapons, which it can provide to Ukraine, and it will perform properly on the modern battlefield. Just there's nothing, like literally, there is nothing what United States can provide. And so he talks about this, Mr. Radin, that Russia has made threats to NATO to dissuade the support, but none have come to fruition. Indeed, there is a good reason to think Russia has little intention to act on them. So it's blah, 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 blah. And he continues with the same more cowbell on how Ukraine can win. Okay, well, then he continues with this. Given that Ukraine suffers daily casualties from attacks on purely civilian targets, he lies, which is normal for people from RAND, and retaliation against Russian infrastructure is more than fair game and can help to even Ukraine's odds by degrading Russia's logistical capacity. Ukraine would bear the brunt of any Russian response, but Kyiv is prepared to take the risk. No, the guy lives in absolutely alternative reality, as most of the US military and intelligence and let alone think tanks. Those people are, and I will explain why Mr. Radin, who wrote this, I wouldn't allow him to mow the lawn in front of my house. So he continues then. Second, the United States could expand its visible US military presence in Ukraine. Yeah, whatever, Western advisors. Again, Western advisors won't pass the entrance exam to any combined arms military officer college or military academy. They will not, simply. That's simple as that. Neither will Mr. Radin, but the point is he continues to pretend that somehow presence of the NATO advisors improves Ukraine. It does not, actually. These guys have zero experience with real war. They have zero academic background to properly conduct operational planning, and of course when you read American combat manuals, field manuals, yeah, this is the field manuals for fighting the third world crap holes, period. It doesn't understand those documents and those doctrines. They do not really even pretend to understand what you're gonna do when people will begin to shoot back at you. So then he continues to write another garbage. Third, the United States should look to expand its operation in space, in cyberspace, in response to Russia's cyber attacks against US space providers and jamming against NATO allies. So, again, blah, 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 more cowbell, more cowbell. And after he said all that, guess what? he comes to this conclusion which completely overturns his own argument. To be sure, avoiding direct military conflict with Russia is of paramount interest. Caution must be exercised to avoid a slippery slope that leads US forces into combat against Russia. Well, so after all, after this hysterical outburst of this absolutely, I mean, it's a complete mess, pseudo-intellectual, pseudo-operational, and strategic mess, he comes to the conclusion that, yeah, you have to avoid the war with Russia. Russians are ready for the war. They're ready for the US army if it decides to do so. Of course, Pentagon doesn't want to do so because it still retains, as I already stated, the only American government institution which still retains a degree of sensibility and competence is Pentagon. The rest of it, every single American government institution under the Biden administration, or for that matter, the same was true for the Trump or Obama administrations, are just utterly incompetent. They are stuffed with people who won't be allowed to run 7-Eleven store in normal countries. But look at this, who Mr. Radin is. And then you will understand why those people continue to lament and cry and, do all those things, which obviously begin to show you how detached from the reality those people are and how incompetent they are. So look at this. Mr. Radin has PhD in political science, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That means he has no education. And he has also bachelor's. And remarkably, he has bachelor's of arts in mathematics. Well, that's the only applicable, actually, skill in what he does, evidently. But let me put it this way. Considering the fact that he's a just good old boy from, all kinds of those think tanks, and Rand is really a butt of jokes. I mean, these people used to be taken seriously. You cannot take them seriously. Or practically everything they write about the issues of strategy on operational are is garbage. Because obviously they do not understand what modern military and military technology is, how it affects the modern battlefield. They talk a lot, but I mean, they have all those credentials. But look at this guy. His only work appeared in Security Studies, the Journal of Conflict Resolution, Washington Quarterly, and War on the Rocks. Another pretty much, amateur outlet, which, where all those, including former cadre officers, go out to cry in the shoulder that how they, they're still the best of the world, but somehow, they lose all their wars. And now, if Mr. Radin doesn't understand what Russia can do, if Russia decides to do so, and look at this. You don't have to go and bomb NATO. You can take a look attentively at how many wonderful military bases the United States has if United States decides to escalate. To a certain degree. Oh my gosh, you have a lot of Middle Eastern bases which can be attacked, and Russia can do it, much more efficiently than Iran did, and that will be a devastating strike. So if Mr. Radin or people in Iran still think that they can really try this, sure, Russia will do this, and this is what they probably understand. The only thing they can do in their lives, the only thing they have been taught, it was, of course, how to do, as I already stated, PR. No actual tangible results, no actual skills, abilities to run anything which produces results, produces something which is of value, which you can touch and say, wow, this is a good thing, or this is a great idea, I can apply it to something. No, there's nothing. They're sterile. They have been absolutely, I don't even know how to say it, hollowed out completely. And when you begin to read this, you can begin to see now the very well pronounced pattern of the desperation and throwing hands into the air. And the point is now, will they go for the suicidal solution? I don't know. Russia is ready to fight combined NATO. And I'm talking about it conventionally even, not necessarily with the non-strategic nuclear weapons. And that's what I want to make in the statement and the conclusion. That's not statement, explanation, that non-strategic weapons are not tactical nukes. Non-strategic nuclear weapons is a completely different story. They could include tactical nukes, but they are not just tactical nukes. And Russia conducts already second day. That's, drills. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, So what can I say? So they want to fight. Russia is ready. And they understand this. Plus, again, most of them are cowards anyway. So, and they now into the deep, as Garland Nixon says, kimchi. And they don't know how to extricate themselves from this kimchi because they have zero skills, zero foresight, zero courage and integrity to do anything about it. And that will be my word for you today, guys. And as always, in conclusion, those who like what I do, please, guys, subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford it, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. That really helps. This allows me to do what I'm doing. So have a nice day, guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.